Mr. Maluleke. 0.1% increase. It's just a couple of thousand people who are no longer economically active in South Africa. Take us through the big salient points of the results that you have released for the quarter 1 2021 of the QLFS.
What we have seen in all the categories of the employment statistics is that there were not much movements. For example, the number of those that are employed in the fourth quarter of 2020 was sitting at 15 million. It only increased by 28,000 people, still remaining at 15 million. The number of those that are unemployed, apologies, the number of those that are unemployed was sitting at 7.2 million in the fourth quarter of 2020. It decreased only by 8,000 people, still remaining at 7.2 million. Only in the number of the discouraged work seeker, where we have seen a movement by about 201,000 people in terms of an increase, and that actually landed us in the first quarter of 2021 at 3.1 million people, discouraged work seekers. So in terms of the areas where these things happened, largely if you look at the sector of finance, it has benefited a lot. It actually remains a sector that is recovering over time, and you can see utilities as well as manufacturing have gained jobs in quarter on quarter, whereas the others like trade, like construction, continue to lose jobs. Actually, construction has been depressed for quite some time.
Let's talk, Mr. Maluleke, about the youth unemployment figures and what they are telling us.
The youth unemployment rate, and when we talk youth, we want to deal with something that could have international comparison. So we're talking about 15 to 24 years. There's always a question why we include 15-year-old people. The laws of this country, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, says it is illegal to hire anyone under the age of 15, meaning that if you're 15 years and above, you can look for employment. But let's get straight to young people. Those aged 15 to 24 years, their unemployment rate is sitting at 63.3%, which remains the highest in the country. So young people of that age cohort remain vulnerable to labor markets. But also when we move further and we look at that age cohort, there are about 10.2 million of those in the country. 3.3 million of them are not in employment, education, or training. And that accounts for about 32.4% in what we call the NEET category of not in employment, education, or training.
Mr. Maluleke, compared to the same period last year, we see that the net decrease of 1.4 million in total employment was recorded for quarter 1 when we compare the two. So this really looks at the period of lockdowns and particularly COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic, that has played a huge role in the dwindling employment numbers. And do you think it's going to continue to play that much of a big role in the next coming months?
I can't predict or talk about what will happen because anything can shift either way. For example, as the numbers of infections occur in the country, restrictions are being put not only in our country, but the world over. But indeed, a COVID-19 environment has had an impact not only on employment, but on all facets of life all over the world, and indeed here in South Africa. But when we look at that, since the second quarter of 2020, where we had seen a dip in unemployment sitting at 23.3%, largely because the economy was sealed off and there were no movements in the country at the time, After that, we have seen a steady rise in unemployment, but a return to normal even for those who are looking for employment. So we have seen a number of people going back to take up employment. Number one, we have seen increases in the number of those that are unemployed, meaning that people had moved out of sitting at home to actively look for employment or to go back to their place of work. So as restrictions are being tightened or eased off, it will have implications in the way we deal with matters of employment. And for those of us in measurement, that's what we will pick up and inform the country through news agencies like yourselves.
Mr. Maluleke, we thank you very much for your time.